I'll call the meeting to order. This is what is today? The 14th, November 14th, 2022 meeting of Portola Valley's Architectural and Site Control Commission. Welcome, everybody. And Laura, would you please check us in and call the roll?
Commissioner Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Koch.
Here.
Commissioner Chung.
Here.
Commissioner Sill.
Here.
And Chair Ross.
Here. Thank you. It's time for oral communications. And if there are any members of the public that would like to address us this evening on an item that is not on tonight's agenda, this is the moment to step up and make your comments. If you would raise your hand electronically, Laura will call on you.
I do not see any hands up in the Zoom world. And so that folks know, there are no members of the public present in the schoolhouse.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, I'll close oral communications, move on to new business. Item 1 is architectural review of a new detached garage for an existing single-family residence at 15 Palmer Lane, the Brandland residence. And this is categorically exempt from CEQA. So our review this evening will be a formal action. And I think Jake is here to make a presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Jacob Garcia. I'm a consulting planner for the town. And the item before you tonight is a request for an architectural review of a new detached garage for an existing main residence at 15 Palmer Lane. The 1 acre lot is zoned residential estate and is a corner lot with primary access from Palmer Lane. The property is surrounded by single family residential located in the same zoning district. And the lot is sloped up from Sawisal Drive with an average slope of 14.5%. There's a 10-foot wide trail easement that runs parallel with the Sawisal Drive, but no work is proposed within that trail easement. On site, there's an existing 2,610 square foot house with an attached garage, a 66 square foot detached shed, a driveway, fencing, and minimal site paths. The applicant proposes to demolish the shed and sections of the existing fence to construct a 675 square foot detached 2-car garage on the existing driveway within close proximity to the main residence. The project also proposes to replace the garage doors of the existing attached garage to match the doors of the proposed detached garage. Minimal changes will be made to the existing impervious surfaces, and final impervious surface areas, while not yet specified, are anticipated to be well below the maximum allowed for the site, as there's an available 3,600 square feet of impervious surface available. The impervious surface totals will be specified prior to building permit issuance. There are two retaining walls being proposed, 3 feet in height, to the right and rear of the garage, and they allow for a site path around the perimeter of the garage. The amount of grading for the retaining walls and site work does not trigger a site development permit. There are no significant trees proposed for removal, and no new landscape plantings are proposed. The proposed plans for the detached garage would meet all zoning requirements, including building height and setbacks. Here's a close-up of the proposed garage, retaining walls in connection to the existing fencing and pedestrian gates. Here are the elevations. The top elevation demonstrates the existing residence with its garage doors to be replaced and blue fence area to be demolished. And below is the proposed elevation of the front of the detached garage and the new garage doors for the main residence to match. Here's the proposed left elevation of the garage. This is the side closest to the residence. Here's the proposed right elevation. This is the side furthest from the residence. Here's the rear of the garage. The proposed materials and colors are to meet the town's requirements for light reflectivity and mostly present a natural color palette. All colors match the existing residence. The proposed siding is to be a hardy plank in chestnut brown with green trim to match the colors of the existing residence. And windows are white with the green trim border. While white windows typically have light reflectivity values that exceed those allowed by the town, the ASCC may approve the windows since they are proposed to match the windows colors that already exist on the main residence shown on your screen. The French doors at the rear of the garage will be a wood color, and the proposed garage doors are custom carriage doors proposed to match the colors of the house. And the garage roof is proposed to be gabled roof and consist of Class A roof shingles in a slate color. This is the proposed lighting plan. There's a total of 9 new light fixtures being proposed and would include 1 light fixture on the front and rear of the garage and 3 light fixtures on either side of the garage with an additional motion sensor light located on the wall facing the main residence. During plan review, staff requested a decrease in the proposed lighting to the minimum necessary for movement and safety to be more consistent with the town's design guidelines. And the applicant has declined to reduce lighting and indicated they found this lighting to be appropriate for the owners to safely age in place. Further, the motion sensor light has been proposed on a swivel in which the town's outdoor lighting ordinance does not allow. Therefore, the light labeled with a green dot will need to be revised to comply with the municipal code prior to building permit issuance. And this slide shows the neighborhood outreach and public noticing completed for the project. The applicants conducted their own their own neighbor outreach to adjacent neighbors and have received no concerns regarding their project. A letter of support is included as an attachment 9 of the staff report. And that's the end of staff presentation. Both staff and the applicant team are available for any questions by the ASCC. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Jake or for Laura? Kenny.
I have one. I was just curious what of our exterior materials policies apply for this project.
For this project, the whole building is subject to the home hardening ordinance. So the materials will need to be non-combustible with a Class A roof. And the applicant is aware of that, and the materials proposed do comply with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Jane?
I do. The Mitsubishi outdoor unit that's on the north exterior elevation, is that for air conditioning or?
It's a heat pump, so it works. It's an efficient heat pump that works as a heater in the winter and air conditioning in the summer.
Right, and what will that be? Will that comply with the noise ordinance on pumps? Will it need enclosing?
I guess I'm not aware of the actual decibel rating of the ordinance, but they this is a no more than a 1 to 1.5 ton Mitsubishi, so it's a rather small one, and the decibel rating is in the 60s, I believe, at 3 meters displaced. So, and it is facing, the fan itself is facing away from the building and into the side hill. So it should, the transport of the noise shouldn't be much of a concern, I don't believe. I think we can get you the decibel rating exactly if that's what's needed.
Okay. Well, sometimes if there are outdoor units, we ask that they're enclosed for the neighbours.
Right.
Noise-wise, but it was just a question. Okay, thank you.
Al,
I'm sorry,
or
I
Megan?
missed that because I somehow lost connection, but
Oh.
was Jane asking about an AC unit?
Yes, it's a heat pump unit. Yeah.
Heat pump unit, okay. Thank you.
Megan, do you have any other questions?
I don't have any
for
questions.
staff?
I do not. Thank you.
And Al, how about you?
No questions.
All righty, let's move on to the applicant presentation. And if you have additional comments or information for us beyond what Jake has provided, please go ahead and let us know.
Yeah, let me just start out with maybe just a few comments. Amparo, who is my architect, and Betty and myself wanted to achieve a elevation profile that faces out to the road that had a good curb appeal, and so we tried to make the elevation look like the existing garage, albeit upgraded with doors that look better than what the doors are in the on the current structure. And so to that end, we found hardy plank, which is a concrete based siding material that is of course meets all the new fire regulations. And we were able to find a stain down at Benjamin Moore, down on Woodside Road. The guy there is an excellent color matcher and was able to match the color of the existing siding. So I think it will blend in quite favorably, you know, with the existing structure. And it is just a single story structure, so there's no view problems from any of our neighbors. We've had them kind of take a look, and you know, it's just kind of out of sight for them. Amparo, do you have any other comments that you'd like to make at this time?
No, I don't really have any comments. I mean, Jake hasn't, that's no comments from me, but.
Okay.
That's all right. I'm sure we'll have questions. Yes, if you've said what you want to say, then I'm sure we're going to have some questions for you. So
okay, I'm out of gas, so fire away.
all right, Al, why don't you begin if you've got questions?
I do. The proposal seems to have more windows than I'm used to seeing in a garage. Is there something special going on with it? Is it really going to be an art studio, or is it really going to be just a garage and you just want a lot of light in your garage?
All of the above. The windows that face out into the backyard take advantage of all the natural landscaping that's back there. So when we decided to build the garage, we were looking toward the future. We're both in our 70s, and you know, at some point in time, we will have to move out of our home, and we wanted to make the design so that new buyers would have the opportunity to use it as maybe a art studio, or perhaps a multi-function room with really good lighting. For me, the having good lighting in the garage is really important, you know, in servicing your automobiles. And I also put in some workbenches in there, as you might guess, to do some work on the benches where good lighting is important.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess the one other question I had was, could you give me a little bit more detail on why you think you need as much lighting around the structure as you do? It does strike me as a bit much.
Yeah, I'm kind of two minds on the lighting, and if you guys think that it's too much, we can certainly look at reduced lighting. Our eyes these days are not as good as they used to be with cataracts. So one of the things we thought about in lighting and having the path around the garage was simply safety. The lights that were selected were taken from the dark skies recommended list. If you actually stop by the residence, you will see it out on our front deck also, 2 telescopes. And so I'm really all in for keeping the dark skies that we have in Portola. We do astrophotography from that deck where darkness is really important. And we also do tracking of near-Earth objects for the astronomy community.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions, Dave.
Thank you, Al. Megan, what kind of questions?
Hi. Okay, so question about Al covered a lot of the lighting, so we don't need to repeat that, but question about the window trim that is white. Would it be such a dramatic change if this garage structure actually had darker window trim? Would it be such a contrast? For one, they're going to keep looking cleaner for longer. You could do a darker paint, matching what is there. I don't really see how it's relevant to the experience from the street, but would it be such a stark change, or is it okay since it's an accessory structure that it would be fine if that structure itself had a little bit of different of a character in painting? So tell me the thinking of why you want to bring the white trim.
It's actually green.
Yeah,
No, the green trim and the windows are white. The
yeah,
window casing itself is what would not be part of our reflectivity guidelines.
right. So if you look on our current house, the windows have white dividers on it, but the trim that is around the windows is actually a dark green. And
Okay, that it would seem to show that the actual frame of the window was white as well.
yeah, so we would, the trim around the window would be green.
Yeah, Jake, you want to pull that up?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I am seeing is that the actual window itself is white.
Yeah, and you see
Is that what you're proposing, or are you just proposing that the pane inside the window be white?
well,
The actual window is white, the trim of the window is white, yeah, just like the existing window, except that they're more vinyl windows. Actually, they're wood windows and they're painted white, and then the trim is green, exactly the same that we're matching the existing.
So my question, I guess, is would it seem like a disassociation with the house, or maybe an enhancement of this structure having a darker framed window, the window itself? Because of course the green and the wood siding is all wonderful, or the wood look siding is all wonderful with our guidelines.
well, so anything is possible. I think what I would propose to do is, I mean, there's as we found out when we visited Benjamin Moore, that there's various reflectivities for the paint I mean, there's a dull white that doesn't reflect a lot of light, and then they're bright light, bright white that has a higher reflectivity. So, you know, we could look at using, you know, the lowest reflectivity white trim. Would that work?
Well, the idea is to ease the town out of these reflective or even, you know, dully reflective white casements. So I'm just asking you, is there a reason why you want to push us to offer this kind of contingent approval on these windows because you were dead set on having that white frame?
I guess I'm not. I guess I'm not dead set on
Yeah.
much of anything.
Yeah, because I also think too, one thing that's interesting about an accessory structure is to make it a little bit different than your main structure, and then it creates a new sense of the environment there. But because we would never on a new build allow a white window.
Yeah, our only thought was just to match it up to the existing house.
But I don't think that the existing house seen by the street would even show that. Like, this is engaged with one side of your house and then the hillside, basically, right? Are these also white trimmed windows in the garage doors?
Yeah, if you know, yes, the existing garage, it looks exactly like this. And then the living room that faces Saucil looks exactly like this. And the bedrooms that are out on the L there look exactly like this. So if you can bring up the site plan, I can show you where those windows are. Okay, so here's the site plan. So this right here is the existing garage. So there's a window here, a window here. The living room is here, and it has windows here and here.
Right, right.
And here's the bedroom here and here and here. Those have those same windows. And here is the Saucil Drive over to your right.
Right.
Do you know if the white windows was originally actually an architectural decision, or have the windows been replaced since the house was originally finished in the existing color scheme? It's just unusual. I think the natural wood finish with the green trim is sort of like a classic finish, but without white windows. It's really, I think it's unusual to see white windows on that color scheme.
You know, if this is a hang-up point, you know, then we can look at painting in green.
Or a different color.
Yeah.
No, I would do green.
Okay.
You don't want to have too many colors.
Yeah.
I think a dark finish, a dark brown finish, or the typical dark bronze finish is what you would normally see for that.
Or the green is typical too as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a cladding that is very available, no doubt. And it will look less dirty too for the homeowner as far as upkeep. And then we're not, as commissioners, we're not setting a precedent of white window casings is my concern.
Okay, make them green.
All right, we're still technically in the question and answer.
Yeah,
phase.
but
We'll
okay,
get into discussion in a minute,
I'm
but
good.
I just want to, okay, you're good for questions?
Yes, thank you.
All right, and Kenny, why don't you go ahead and continue if you have more questions to ask?
Thanks. The only other one I had is I'm a little bit puzzled over the to be determined impervious surface area.
I want to respond to that. Before the meeting, we were asked to, about the driveway. We're making the whole driveway permeable. All the complete driveway is gonna be permeable. So we changed that already.
Currently, it's asphalt, so we're gonna put in permeable pavers.
In the whole driveway.
And through the chair, this may be a point worth clarifying as well. The garage itself is located in an area of an existing driveway that is counted as impervious. So there may actually be an overall reduction of impervious surface. There's some small edits to the perimeter of the driveway that will likely not result in a final impervious surface that's even close to the maximum allowed threshold. But those figures just haven't been clarified entirely yet, but we didn't want that to hold up the project moving forward. So that's why we brought it forward with to be determined indication, but it's not anticipated to increase. It may actually decrease or stay around the same based on the designs that you've seen so far.
Okay, that's helpful. So is it fair to say that there's a presumption that a recommendation to approve this would come with the impervious surface area landing somewhere underneath the zoning limit?
Yes, it's well under from our understanding of the project. And so there's a condition of approval that just says that the final building permit plans would have to demonstrate that. But because it's so far under, we didn't want to hold up the project and force them to make another revision prior to ASCC.
Okay, that sounds fair. Thank you.
Jane, do you have questions?
Yes, I do. Because I'm a bit struck by the amount of glazing in the building. To me, with the amount of lights that are going to be in the garage, and you've got LED lights under counters, etc. as well, with all the glazing on basically all sides, it's going to look a little like one of those old-fashioned lamps. Because you've got glazing in the doors, you've got glazing above the doors, you've got basically a wall of glass on the section facing the garden. I mean, I've seen less glazing in ADUs, so I'm rather concerned that this is going to be a light box for the area, and that the neighbours are going to be very upset because they'll be looking into it all the time. So I'm wondering what other, whether all the glazing was a design feature you really loved, or
It's
or you
both.
had any other thoughts?
Yeah, it's both. It's there's three axes here to talk about. One is that the glazing that is facing the garden is for enjoying the beauty of the backyard and all the natural gardens that are there. If you would actually see the backyard, you would find that there's there is kind of a mound and hill type feature that prevents any light from going to the next door neighbor. Number two, the lighting is set on multiple circuits, and each of the circuits have dimmers on them. I intend to use the garage lighting also only in the day. Being out there at night and not using my astrophotography gear is just not in the cards. So at night, this thing is on you know, on a motion detector. And so unless there's motion, those lights will not be on. And finally, we both have cataracts that are type 2 moving to type 3. So we have a dimming effect due to our eyesight. And I just want to make sure that we do have enough to be able to see things. So, I mean, it was really an important design feature for us in the way that we've designed the structure. Now, I will point out that we were very energy conscious on those. Those are both double pane glass, and they are the argon filled, and they are tinted. So the heat loading due to those windows is really small. And moreover, the garden side glass is facing north primarily, and so sunlight really never comes in the north side of the building there.
Right, I can understand the amount of glazing on the garden side. It's the one facing the road that concerns me the most. So,
well,
Right.
I think
Well, let's stick to questions and answers for the moment. But if that's, Jane, if that's still a question, if you're wondering about the design motivation, then let's continue. Go ahead, Dale.
I understand it's just the amount of glazing on the roadside I'm finding difficult.
well, I mean, there's many ways. If you're very worried about that, there's many ways of mitigating any of that. Certainly with shades.
Right. Okay. Right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other subjects? Jane, has anybody else developed another question in the meantime? I have a couple of questions about colors. I noticed that the French doors on the garden side appear to be brown wood. Is that natural or painted? The stile and rail doors?
Generally speaking, that's painted with the same with the same stain as our as the main building.
Okay. And what about the carriage doors on the garage side?
Yeah, those are painted essentially with the same stain, but there's a little bit different blend to give them a little bit more of an accent treatment.
Okay, but generally they'll be dark.
Yes, they're
tile and rail and sash.
Yeah, they're generally the color of the building itself, and we did supply the reflectivity measurements from the paint vendor, and they're very low reflectivity.
The reason I'm asking is because that would be a choice you could make in the window frame, the window sash color selection. If you were looking to match things up the way Megan recommended, rather than matching the existing house sash color of white, you have a fair amount of sash and stile and rail proposed here that will be in a darker brown color.
Right.
So that's why I raised that question, if I am seeing those colors properly. And on the garden side also, it appears that the windows will be not factory windows, they're probably glass that's set into stops.
That's right. It's hard to, get factory windows when you're trying to do something a little bit more elegant.
Yeah, I'm sure you won't be able to find a catalog window of the size and shape you want.
Yeah.
But it looks to me like what you're proposing to do on those windows is to paint the sash in the brown color as well.
Uh-huh.
Okay. The light that's on a motion sensor, what is your thinking about the purpose for that, and do you need to have it on a swivel? Are you planning to aim it in a certain direction, or?
We have a new light. We chose a new light for the motion sensor,
Mhm.
and we were proposing another light that doesn't move and doesn't have any kind of movement. So it just directs the light towards the path,
Okay,
the door, and so we changed that already.
and so then you have two light fixtures at that corner of the building that are within a foot or two of each other.
Yeah, one of them is a motion sensor and the other one is regular light that's for lighting the pathway, so into the house, because that's how you get into the house.
Sure. And I'm assuming that if let's say it's dark and you turn on the lights, that the motion sensor light's going to come on anyway.
Correct, if there's somebody there, yeah.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, that does answer my question. Thank you.
I can show you the light that we picked out since.
Sure, if you have it.
Jake, do you have the plans or share screen? Let's see. Okay.
You have the ability to share the screen if you'd like to show the picture of the fixture.
Okay, I can show the fixture. Let's see. It's this one. Can you see my screen?
No.
Dale, can you see my screen?
No. Did you hit the share screen button down at the bottom?
Yeah, I did. Let's see. Go back to Zoom here. Share screen. Okay, we're gonna do this. Okay, that's it. Yeah. So this is the light we're using for motion detector. So it doesn't have any movement. The motion detector is underneath here. It doesn't show in this one, but it's basically here. But it's a light that the light is going, it's reflecting towards the bottom, so towards the pathway.
Great. Thank you for showing that.
Sure. It's actually the only one in the market that I could find. Didn't move. Because all of them do move, and
Right.
Through the chair, did you want to know the lumen level on that light that they're proposing?
Yes, that would be
I'm
great
not
to know.
seeing it. I don't know if the applicant team knows the lumen level.
What sort of lamp does it take? Trying to see if it has that information here.
Maybe lower on this PDF, the lumens are shown. Amparo, are you able to scroll down on this?
Yeah, sure. Hold on a second.
Thank
I
you.
have to go back to. mm, See. What was your question? What did you need? The amount of,
The amount of light.
um,
Yeah, it looks like it exceeds the 1,200 limit. It looks like this is either 13 or 1,400 or,
Right, delivered
1,000.
lumens in the center of the table there.
I do this one, 1345. But that light only is going to work when there's some motion for, there's somebody coming near the property. So,
That's
it's a
the
motion
intent.
sensor. It's
With
not
the
going,
lumen on it.
so it's gonna be on a timer, and it's also gonna be like, here's the motion sensor we're using right here on the accessories here.
Mhm.
That's gonna fit right underneath here. That fits right there. It's so a better picture of it. I have a white one that's showing, hold on 1 second.
Yeah, I think the main concern is just how bright this light is going to be, even if it's only on intermittently, but it will come on every time somebody walks through that pathway. And at night, if, let's say, the residents, you now, but in the future, somebody else is walking through that area to go through the gate into the garden, and it's dark, the likelihood is that they'll want to turn on the lights that are fixed there. And
Yeah.
additionally, the motion sensor light will come on as well. So I'm just pointing out that with all of those lights on simultaneously, the motion sensor light will come on automatically. The others will be turned on with a switch. And you're going to have a total of a great deal of light in that area when that happens. So that's why I was curious about the lumen level. And the town's recently revised outdoor lighting ordinance has limitations on how many lumens of lighting you can have. And Laura, is that 1,000 lumens?
There's 1,000.
Yeah.
Correct.
So this,
All the lights that we have,
Jake,
Mhm.
other than the motion sensor, is under 1,000.
The outdoor lighting ordinance lighting brightness limitations is 1,125 lumens per fixture. So this replacement fixture in itself would not technically comply with the town's exterior lighting requirements, and we would ask for it to be revised typically.
Do we
Right.
need a sensor? Is it required a sensor?
No motion sensors are technically required. In some
But we-
cases, they're
we
just.
don't need one, then we just take it out. We don't have to have one. We just thought that we were required to have a sensor. And it makes sense to have a sensor for security reasons, but we don't have to have one. Can we take it out?
well, you're one of the, when we get around to discussing our thoughts as commissioners here, one of the things you may hear is a recommendation to simply remove this fixture altogether.
Okay,
I think I'm fine with it. I don't need it.
And I'll have a little bit more to say about that when we're done asking questions. I just want to make sure that we've flushed out all the questions that everybody has before we go into discussion. So are there any other questions, commissioners? Or should we? I think the next step would be to take public comment if there's anybody in the audience that would like to make a comment at this time on this particular item. Now's your chance.
Any members of the public, please raise your hand in Zoom if you wish to speak. There are no members of the public present in the schoolhouse. We have one hand up with the phone number ending in 7562.
7563, you're on the air. So go ahead and make your comment.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Bertongen. I'm also a resident on 100 Palmer Lane, and I just wanted to let you know these are wonderful people, Dale and Betty, and they really fit in the conservative Portola Valley. What I had questions earlier to ASCC is I was kind of surprised that a project like this had to come in front of ASCC. To me, that's just like an ADU. And many of these ADUs were approved ministerially or upon discretion. And I'm hoping to, I hope that you can explain the difference and why this had to be submitted to the ASCC. I'm also comparing this project with 77 Palmer Lane, which definitely have a negative impact on the residents. And I mean, right now I didn't have a chance to look at what the lighting was, but I hope that we're fair in approving one project and be fair to the other neighbors as well, especially for longtime residents who are good neighbors to in Portola Valley. Yeah, I would like to know what the process is and if this is something that has changed. Yeah. I would appreciate if somebody can let me know. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Carolyn. Typically, this isn't intended to be a question and answer session with the public, but I'll just mention very briefly, and if you want to follow up with staff, you could get more information. In what has changed is that accessory dwelling units, ADUs, are now exempt by state law from a discretionary review. So 5 years ago, if this was an ADU or any ADU in town, we would be reviewing it. But because the state is trying hard to create more incentives and reduce barriers for people to create additional dwelling units, not garages, but places for people to live, those projects are now exempt from our review, and that's by law. So it's not a policy change on the town's part, except just in order to comply with the law. And Laura, if I've mischaracterized that,
No,
please
that's
jump
accurate.
in.
Thank you.
Okay.
The threshold for ASCC review is 400 square feet. So this
Right.
garage exceeds 400 square feet there, and it's not an ADU, therefore it requires ASCC approval.
Right. Great. Thanks for backing me up there. All right. Well, I'll close the public comment section unless there's any other hands raised,
There are no other hands up.
and turn it over to commissioners for discussion. And is there anybody who's eager to start? Megan, you usually like to start things off.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Okay, so I obviously understand the desire for this family to build this extra garage and workspace. And I appreciate how they are certainly improving the appearance of both garages, the one existing and the new one, to just be that much more aesthetically pleasing. So I like that. And if this is in fact something that will just be used mostly during the daytime, the glazing on the street side is not necessarily that much of an issue, but we would never allow a single family home's garage to have this excessive glazing on this side. Now, the glazing on the garden side, certainly that is fine. That is what within their own relationship to that side of the garage. It will not affect any neighbors. The light spill, of course, might affect an uphill neighbor or someone, but I don't have a problem with that. The fixed light, I think or I'm sorry, not the fixing the light, the motion sensor light. I think there is absolutely a fixture out there that has the appropriate lumens that could replace the light fixture with the switch if they need to have a motion sensor. So like one or the other, right? And there's definitely a lower lumen motion sensor light out there. So that's not a problem. So one or the other. Now the lighting that's on the other side of the home where the retaining wall is, that's I would say on the, is that the east side? Maybe that lighting is a little bit overdone. So I would recommend reducing that. Other than that, I think I'd love to hear what my commissioners think. I for sure would like to see the white window casings changed. And in fact, I think the green or a brown, but the green would look aesthetically beautiful and still has that cottage vibe that I'm sensing what this property has. So basically the light fixture, choose one or the other, reduce lighting on the east side. Want to hear your thoughts, commissioners, on the glazing. I'm not super comfortable with on the roadside, and the change of the trim.
Great. Thank you, Megan. Kenny, what are your thoughts?
I agree with Megan. I think it seems like there's been a slight misunderstanding of some of these requirements, and my sense is that the applicants are perfectly amenable to meeting the letter of these requirements on the exterior reflectivity and the lighting. So I'm inclined to recommend approval with conditions to bring the exterior colors into compliance, bring the lighting into compliance. I think with the applicants being interested in astronomy, they're only serving themselves by bringing the lighting into compliance, or better. I think there's one of the things that we hope for is, there's a tendency for, if somebody starts putting on routinely bright lights, other people assume that that's okay, and you very quickly get into a situation where these kind of astronomy activities are really significantly impacted. And so that's sort of part of the hope with our requirements for the lighting, to sort of prevent that kind of thing, and that it seems like it only serves the applicants to bring that into compliance. I really understand the desire for natural lighting in a workshop space. I do think that the south-facing gable windows, the street-facing gable windows, I don't actually think those will serve the workshop space as clear glazing with direct sunlight streaming through. That will actually be a problem for the usability of the space as a studio. So I do think that the applicants in any case will find themselves putting at least translucent shades on those glazings in order to use the space effectively as a studio. But I don't think we have strict requirements in that regard. So I'm not personally willing to put that as a condition, but as a recommendation to at least include shades on those. It's something that they will have to do to use it as a studio effectively anyway. So the main thing for me is to recommend approval to include conditions to bring the color and the lighting into compliance.
Right. Thank you, Kenny. Al, do you have some comments, discussion?
Yes, basically, I think that this is a good proposal. We're tweaking it around the edges, but overall, I think that the applicant's done a good job in proposing a reasonable structure. I mean, I'm glad to see that it's non-combustible. I think that barring the white windows, that the color palette is nice. So there's lots of positives here. I think it's great that there's not issues with height and setbacks and things like that. From my perspective, I would say that the lighting on the west side of the structure is acceptable, but I'd like to see the motion sensor light go away. I think that creates too much lighting over there. The lighting on the south and the north faces, I think, is fine. And on the east face, it really sounds to me like what you want there is to light up a path. So it feels like those really ought to be more like path lights rather than lights that are mounted up on a wall, which that just seems like it's not creating a lit space that's really what you want. So having 4 or 5 very low lumen path lights over on that side seems to me that would really do more of what you want and be less objectionable. In terms of the actual window finish, I think either a brown wood tone finish or a green finish would be fine. Even though the white finish, from my perspective, is not a disaster because I don't think it's so visible. But I think really the right choice is either a wood finish or a green finish. I like the idea of permeable pavers for the driveway. I think it's great that you're upgrading the garage doors on the existing garage so that it all matches. Good choice of siding. So in general, I really, even though we're making lots of comments, I think this is quite a good proposal. And with just a few tweaks, I think it'll be very acceptable.
Great, thank you, Al. And Jane.
Right. I was happy that the design was completed around the existing tree canopy. And I agree with the other commissioners about the need to reduce the lighting, especially on the side going up the hill. I'd like to see a plan for enclosing the HVAC heat pump unit if it's above the decibels recommended. But I really don't like the glazing on the roadside. I'm okay accepting the window colours because I understand that would mean that all the windows around all the house would need to be painted, but I don't like the glazing on the roadside above the garage doors. So I don't know whether we can further discuss that. I'm fine with the glazing facing the garden, but I think the problem is that in the future, you might not have somebody as conscientious about switching lights off in the evening, and neighbours in the future might just see that glazing lit up all the time because the owners aren't using an on-off switch to shut down the circuit. So it would be the lantern effect of that building from the road. So I think those are all my comments.
Great, thank you, Jane. Well, I want to start out by saying that I think overall this is an excellent application. I like the size and massing of the structure, matching the visible features from the street to the existing house. That's done very well. and I really appreciate that. The use of permeable pavers, I think, is a great idea. I know that there are some issues with whether the town actually considers them to be permeable or not. So that'll be something to just be aware of as you're selecting your material and calculating the impermeable surface. But as I understand it, even if the entire thing were paved with asphalt or concrete, it would still be under the allowable budget for impermeable surface. So I think using permeable pavers is a great idea. And even if it doesn't officially classify as a permeable material by the town's requirements, it still will allow water to percolate, and I appreciate that. I'm not too concerned about the heat pump unit noise level. A lot of the improvements in those units, in similar units over the last few years, have been in noise reduction. So unless you choose a really, really noisy one, and I don't think Mitsubishi makes a really noisy one, I believe it'll be okay. And it's at least partly screened by the retaining wall that's about as tall as that unit is, just a few feet away. Also, the sound level drops off considerably when you get a little bit farther away. So if it's 60 dB at the unit or close to the unit, it's probably less than 50 at the property line. And I believe that it's hard to rely on the noise ordinance because it's just not very clearly crafted. But I think the noise ordinance says 50 decibels at the property line is the threshold. But really the main question is whether it's going to annoy the neighbors. And I don't know where the neighbor's residence is situated on the other side of you. But if they're very close by, then you might think about adding some noise attenuation of some kind. So that's the heat pump, permeable pavers. I like that you're replacing the garage doors on the existing garage with the carriage doors. So as you stand in the middle of the driveway at the street, what you're going to be looking at is 2 sets of carriage doors that are painted brown. Maybe they'll have green trim around them. And you'll be able to see sort of a little bit on a bias, the side of the new garage building with a pair of operable windows that are white. So just sort of thinking about what a person is going to see, whether it's you or somebody else, I think the white is what's going to stand out as being different from everything else you can see. So I don't have a problem approving the project with the white sash, but I would suggest that you think about that a little more and ask yourself what you're really going to be comparing that sash to as you stand at any particular spot. Is it more important to match the existing windows on the house or to have a sort of consistent look from some vantage point that the public might see from the street or from the end of the driveway? Just sort of a comment about the garage. I think of a garage as a place to store cars. That's the usual intention. They start out that way and then they become storage units and workshops and all sorts of other things, and the cars live outside. This does not really look to me like it's designed to house cars. That's just a sort of comment. It's not really our jurisdiction to dictate how you use this, but with a furniture setting and a television on the inside, my sense is it's more workshop / living space than a garage. It's a kitchen short of an ADU. and maybe a bathroom. But, and in fact, if you put a little kitchen and a bathroom in here, you don't have to go through the ASCC. You could call it an ADU, and we don't get to make our comments. But anyway, I can see why you have so much glazing. It's driven by what appears to be the intended use, which is to use this as space occupied by humans rather than space occupied by cars. Otherwise, there would be no reason to hang out in the garage just in order to see the garden. Right? You can look at the garden from the house or from being in the garden. But if you're going to be in the garage a lot, it's nice to have all of that view. I share Kenny's concern that the amount of light coming in and the heat gain that you get from the south-facing gable windows is going to be pretty awesome. I have a couple of similar windows, and at the right time of day, it's pretty amazing. So I think you're going to want to put shades on those, which would also help with potential light spill. And of course, that's the other issue. When we think about garages as a space that might contribute to light spill, we tell ourselves, well, it's a garage. It's going to hold cars. There's probably not really going to be people in it at night. So there would be no reason to have the lights on. But this looks like living space to me, and the lights are probably going to be on quite a bit at night. So I would say, you know, of course, you wouldn't leave the lights on when you're making your observations and using a telescope, but your neighbor might be while you're in the garage or shop working on something. So I just say, just be really aware that with this much glazing, if the lights are on the inside at night, it does become a lantern box. And it's really the light spill that we're more concerned about than how well you're lit on the inside. A typical garage doesn't really need very much illumination. As far as the exterior lights go, I would feel pretty strongly about on the retaining wall side of the new garage, I would take all of those light fixtures off. I guess I don't quite understand why someone would need to be using that as a way to get to the backyard at night. It's, you know, the whole structure is lit up a lot on the outside. Maybe one fixture, if the heat pump fails in the middle of the night and you want to see if there's a fuse you can reset or something, you might want to get back there. But just in terms of how you're going to use that, that sort of pathway or corridor back there, it seems to me that the lighting is out of proportion with anything that you might use that space for. That's enough illumination to actually, you know, occupy and use that space at night for something, rather than just to be enough light to make traveling safe through there. And I would make that comment also about the side closest to the house that currently has 4 fixtures on it, and I would think 2 would be perfectly adequate. 2 will give you quite a bit of illumination there. Even with cataracts, you could get a lot of light there. You can get to 2,200, 2,300 lumens, and that's enough light to read a book outdoors at night. So I don't want to end on what sounds like a negative posture here. I like your project. I just think it's overlit on the outside. And I think that there's an opportunity for a lot of light spill here, and I hope that you and future owners will be really conscientious about that. And I'd like to ask you to think about the white sash windows as the only thing that the public will see that sort of doesn't match it. you want to match the windows that are in the existing house, but from the public's viewpoint, what we'll see is white sash windows that don't really match with anything anything else we can see. So those are just suggestions. They're not, I don't imagine making them conditions of approval. But the lighting, I would say, does need to come down considerably. And I would like to make that a condition of approval for whoever makes a motion here. I'd like to see a condition of approval for a significant exterior lighting reduction that comes back just to maybe one ASCC member to take a look at before it's finally approved. But other than that, I'm in favor of approving this project tonight. And if somebody would like to make a motion, or if there are some more discussion to have, commissioners.
I'd like to say one thing. Jane had mentioned for them to redo all the windows. That's not what my intention was. My intention was just the new construction to have compliant, low reflectivity, and a very attractive windows.
Great. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. And that's what I assumed you meant, that there's no need to change the existing house. Over the course of time, somebody might choose to do that. But as far as this application goes, that would not be a requirement.
And if I can just run through, commissioners, if we're on the same page, excessive lighting at what I'm calling the east side or retaining wall side, maybe could come back to us as maybe a path light or even just a single light fixture. And also the row of lights that's facing the home, reduce that to 2. One may be a compliant fixed motion sensor, but no more necessary. And as far as the glazing goes, I do not love the clear story, let's call them windows, on the garage driveway side. But I do understand the back. So if you guys don't agree, I mean, I would say eliminate those. The garage door itself actually has windows in it. So, and there's windows on all sides of the garage itself. So that's a little bit of overkill, but I don't want to overstep my my motion, but just like, let's just come back together about this.
Well, I would vote against the project for the sole reason of those glazed lights above the garage door. I'm happy with everything else that's been said regarding lighting and motion sensors, etc. But I'm worried about the future owners who might not be as considerate or might not like watching the dark sky. That's why I'm worried about those glazed units on the road facing. So I would go along with everything else that everyone has suggested, but I wouldn't approve overall for those glazed lights on the front, on the roadside. But I'm one of 5, so it would still pass.
Well, I think that's worth discussing. And Al and Kenny, how do you feel about that glazing facing the street?
Yeah, I'm not as uncomfortable with it as Jane is. I have a sense that it fits with how the owner expects to use the space. You know, there is a concern in terms of what future owners would do, but you know, that's pretty speculative. So I would go along with it. I thought that Megan's recommendations on the lighting were spot on, and I would agree with those completely. But I'm not of a mind to force the applicant to change the windows.
Kenny, do you have any additional discussion on this one?
I guess I would put it to the applicant and ask the applicant how whether or not the direct sunlight through those south-facing gable windows is part of the program, because it doesn't sound like it from the, and it doesn't look like it from the use of the space that it seems like
Yeah.
is likely.
So, so on that particular side, the side that's facing Palmer Lane, those windows, those face to the east, and as we all know, the sun rises in the east. Across the street, our neighbors have incredibly beautiful 50-foot tall redwood trees. And so the sun elevation has to get above about 25 degrees off of the horizon before you can even see the sun. So, but we do get diffuse light through the tree canopy from that side. So from the perspective of the sun just beating in there and heating up the space, I'm not worried about that. We will get the benefit of the diffuse sunlight to light up the interior of the garage. You know, the other couple things that come to mind in listening to your discussion, which I think is pretty interesting, analytics. The first, I just happened to look up the decibel rating of the mini split heat pump, and the one I looked up was 40 decibels. So it's pretty quiet, very quiet, in fact. So I'm not too worried about that. And I think I agree with the comment on the just getting rid of the light, the 1300 lumen light with the motion detector. We don't need that. So that goes away. In terms of the window trim, yeah, that nice green that we have accenting the rest of the house, that would be the way to go there. And keep in mind that those windows they have a glazing on them. And that glazing is twofold. One is for lower heat transfer into the space, and two, to give a kind of a darkening look to them.
Right. Thanks for checking in on those. And I think listening to Commissioner's comments and my own thoughts on this, we as a commission have a slightly different perspective about projects than the people who have to live with them. You have your program, you want certain things, and a consideration of how much light might emanate from this building I'm guessing is probably something you haven't thought about very much.
I think about light all the time.
Well, yeah,
as an astronomer.
you can. So if you were sitting in one of our chairs and looking at this as an astronomer for, say, one of your neighbors, if this was your neighbor's project, you might say, wow, what's going to happen if until 10 o'clock every night, somebody's in that workshop with some bright illumination? It's going to be the brightest object in the night sky. You know, it's going to affect our night vision. It's going to affect what we can see. There's an opportunity here for somebody, not you maybe, but for somebody else to be the brightest object in the neighborhood with all of this glazing. The opportunity here for light spill is tremendous.
Okay.
I think that's what we're saying.
Have you all seen, and I have these in our home, we have black window shades that when we're doing astrophotography, that we can pull down on terms of light spill. It turns out that you can get those same black shades with a motorized unit. And what you can do is you can hook it up to a light sensor that would actually close the shades at dusk. That might be a solution to
Yeah,
consider.
the shading in those type of windows, that would be a really tricky shade to construct because of the pitch of the roof. It's not just a normal window. I mean, I honestly think that removing those upper windows, keeping the ones in the garage, but removing those on the driveway side would alleviate everyone's anxiety and concern here. And if other fellow commissioners are willing to go along with that for approval, I could stand by that. I know Jane obviously would.
I want to say something about that. I don't know if you guys have noticed that the electrical plan involves a zoning. There's different zones of the inside of the lights. So most of the time, in fact, I'd say like only maybe 10% of the time you are going to need all the lights that are at one time on. And with the zoning allows us to see, and also the dimmers allows us to control the lights. The lights are not going to be on at all times. Maybe they will be on in the daytime. So, you know, this is a personal space. And so we're using, so there's zonings involved in the actual, if you look at the electrical plan, you can see there's different zonings that, so you're not turning the lights on all at one time. Like you walk in the room and you can dim the lights and you can have zones. There's 3 zones in the whole entire space.
Okay, so I'm concerned now. You just said it's a personal space, so it's not a garage.
It's a space that is will be used for people, like Mr. Ross said. It's not a car. It's more for people to use as a space, artist space, whatever.
No,
Yeah,
well,
and-
so if you look into our garage right now, you would see it's absolutely full. And our 2 cars are outside, so.
Yep.
You know,
Same
so,
for me.
so
I think that's pretty universal. I mean, I know people that keep a car in their garage, but it's not the majority.
yeah, I mean, so, you know, so it will definitely be a mixed use type thing when we don't have 2 cars in the garage. When we do, it's a garage. When we have maybe 1 car in the garage and 1 car in the driveway, you know, then I did put in some workbench there. And, you know, I would be using it to do some bench work. So in that sense, it is a people space, you know, when I'm in there.
Understood.
Yeah.
So we have one point of discomfort among commission members. You know, for my part, I'm fairly confident that you will be responsible folks. You'll put shades there if you get a complaint from a neighbor in particular, and you'll be conscientious about turning the lights off or keeping them dim. I don't have an issue with that. But looking at this as a structure that will probably, you know, outlive all of us, who knows what the next users will do. It's quite possible that this will become a kid's playroom that, you know, there will be parties going until midnight with all the lights on. So it's not so much about how you're going to use it and what your intentions are. It's what could be done with this, the way it's designed. And so it's what I'm trying to say is it's not personal. We're not trying to gang up on you. I have every confidence that you would be really responsible about it. But anyway, we maybe have discussed this about as much as we can. Is someone willing to try to make a motion here and see if we can take an action? Nobody's jumping right in, so let me nominate Al. Al, you're very good at crafting motions.
Oh, am I trying to craft a motion that can pass?
Well, I'd say it's up to you. You know, you can make a motion, any of us can make amendments to it. We can see how that goes down in a vote.
Well, why don't I make a motion that maybe wouldn't be my first choice, but I think would reflect, I think, the consensus of the commission members. So I think my motion would be to approve the project with the condition that the lighting on the hillside or the east side would be removed, that the lighting on the west side would be reduced to 2 fixtures, and that the windows on the south side, the clear story windows, would be removed.
Window color.
Window color. Okay, window color would either be green or natural, not white.
All right, we have a motion on the table. Is there someone who will make a second to that motion?
I would second that.
Is there a discussion before we take a vote? Does anybody want to?
So that, just to be clear, that's with the road facing windows removed, just the garage doors remaining.
That was my intent. Yeah, I don't know if I said it very clearly, but that was the intent. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm actually not completely in favor of that, but I can see that that's kind of the way the commission is leaning. So I'm fine with you know, if that's what we need to get this project approved.
Okay.
So Jane, are you a second?
Megan seconded.
Oh, Megan, did you second that?
Yes, I did.
All right. Well, we have a motion and a second. I think the conditions that we've added are fairly clear. So I'll call for a vote. And I think that, Laura, you're taking individual votes from commission members. Is that right?
Yes, we'd like to do a roll call vote when we're not all in
Okay.
the same place.
Great.
So Commissioner Sill,
Aye.
Commissioner Coe,
Yes, aye.
Commissioner Chung,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Chair Ross.
Aye.
The motion
So-
passes 5-0.
Yeah, it's a 5-0 vote. And I don't think it was in your motion, Al, but I think we discussed it, that these changes would need to be reviewed by a single member of the ASCC.
Yes.
One.
Right. And Laura, is that clear in the record?
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for bringing this project. It really is a very nice project. I hope you can proceed with it and live with our conditions. There are ways to pursue appeals if you're not happy with it, but I hope you can live with it. I think it's a very good project. So
I think it's a better project. Better for everyone.
from our point of view, all right. All right. Thank you very much for coming. That closes item 1 on our agenda. And let's see what else we have to do here tonight. Well, we're already at commission reports. So have any commissioners taken any commission activities in the last couple of weeks?
None from me.
I did get a call about a property at the end of Cresta Vista Lane, which was where somebody had redone the trail, which is at the end of Cresta Vista, goes along Cervantes. But I think that's now been dealt with via Howard. It was to do with planting and changing the trail structure. But I think that's now been dealt with by Howard Young at the town centre.
Right. Anyone else? I've not done any ASCC business, but well, I guess it actually is ASCC business. There's a proposal in front of the town to for a resident, actually Woodside, who would like to make a gift to the town of a sculpture. And I'm representing the ASCC on the ad hoc committee that's reviewing the proposal. There's been no action taken or decision made yet, except to take a look at potential sites for evaluation. It's a sculpture of a horse, and you may be hearing more about it in the coming weeks. The potential donor hasn't fully committed to making this gift. I think it's something that's just being worked out between staff and the donor and this small committee that's looking at where it might go. So I'll probably have some follow-up the next time we meet. No, I don't think I've done anything else that relates to the ASCC. So that's about it for commission reports. I will, though, invite any member of the public who would like to comment on this item to raise their hand and have their say. Carolyn, are you still with us?
We have one hand up from Rita.
Oh, Rita. Very good. Well, welcome, Rita, and please go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my comment. I'm wondering, I've asked in many of the other committees, but perhaps this is the one that can do something about that trailer that has been on the corner of Alpine and Westridge for almost a year now. And anytime I've asked, it's going to be removed the following month. But I know that the umbilical cord to my landlines is connected to that, and every time it rains, it goes out. But if I had that trailer on my property, all of you would be at my house finding me or talking to me or something, but it is there with, cords hanging out of it. And it's quite unsightly on the corner of Westridge and Alpine for almost a full year now.
Does it happen to be owned by AT&T?
It happens to be owned by AT&T. But if I had a friend that put a trailer like that on my property owned by somebody else, you guys would be knocking on my door 2 seconds later, and I would be part of this meeting in not necessarily a positive way. So if there's anything in the capacity of this particular group that can do anything towards this, many people, not just myself, would appreciate it.
Is it in the public right of way?
I'm not, I don't have a map. I haven't gone on a map. I just pass it a few times every single day. So perhaps someone from this or the planning office can answer that question, but it is there.
I think it might be in the town setback, not the public right of way, not on anybody's personal property.
Whatever you can do towards it, to look into it, and it wouldn't just be me that appreciates it. So thank you very much for whatever it is that you can do to make it go away and have our phones, our phones being working is a whole nother story. I'm used to my 2 landlines not working
Right.
every time it rains or now and then, but that trailer, there's got to be something better than that. AT&T is a big company, and your group can actually ask them to do something or at least cover it. If there was a porta potty there, it would be covered. That trailer could be covered. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rita, for your comments. And we can't discuss it, sadly, because that's how the Brown Act works. But I'm sure staff has heard your concerns, and we can all certainly make phone calls as individuals to AT&T and complain about it. Anyway, Laura, are there any other hands up?
Yes, David Cardinal has his hand up.
Welcome, David. David, you're on. You may be muted. Dave, if you're speaking, we
like
cannot hear you.
He looks like he's unmuted on his side, but
Okay. Dave, are you speaking? Maybe it's accidental.
okay, so we can just try him back at the end if you want for the chair.
Yeah. Anybody else wanting to comment on commission reports?
There are no other hands up. And just
Great.
so everyone knows, there's no members of the public in the schoolhouse, and there's 4 attendees, including Craig Taylor, the Planning Commission liaison.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll close item 2, open item 3, staff report. And Laura, are you going to give us an update on the housing element?
There's a lot been happening on the housing element. I wanted to make sure that the ASCC is aware of it. There's a series of important meetings coming up with the Planning Commission in particular. So we have received the comments back from the state, from Housing and Community Development. And so there's a big comment letter. If anyone wants to review the comment letter, it's available on the website. So it's portolavalley.net/housing element. And on that website is the latest housing element draft and that comment letter. So a lot of information is there if you want to see it. Overall, our assessment is that there's a lot of work left to be done, but our initial reading of the comment letter is that we're in reasonably good shape on the major elements of the housing element itself. So kind of the main content of it is acceptable. We do need to have a follow-up conversation with our HCD reviewer to make sure we understand some of the language, but we are proceeding on making some of those changes. We had a meeting of the Ad Hoc Housing Element Committee, where, as you know, Commissioner Sill is your representative. And so we had that meeting last Thursday to update them on what's been happening. So if you're interested in that discussion, that would be a good video to watch. If it's not posted now, it will be very shortly. Then for upcoming meetings, this Wednesday night, the Planning Commission will be meeting on the mitigated negative declaration. That's the CEQA document, the environmental review that's associated with this work. And so that is this Wednesday night to receive public comments. And then the Planning Commission will meet again on November 30th, December 7th, and December 13th. So that's a tentative schedule, of course, but we do anticipate meeting all of those meeting dates. So the currently seated Planning Commission will make a recommendation on the housing element by December 13th. And then the new town council will be sworn in, and then the new town council will take the action on the housing element and all of the associated pieces in January. The housing element and everything with it really needs to be approved by January of 2023. So there's a big topic that's going on. I want to make sure that the ASCC members are familiar with this concept. It's called the builder's remedy. You could Google that. There's media reports about it. And if you're interested in hearing more, we talked about it quite a bit at the Housing Element Committee meeting from last week, and we'll be continuing to talk about it at upcoming meetings. The short version is that it's a way of interpreting a law that's been in effect for a long time with a new kind of interpretation that allows developers to potentially apply for projects that do not comply with the general plan or the zoning if the city or town does not have a housing element that's in compliance with the law. So there's a very big push right now for the town and for other jurisdictions to get housing elements approved by the end of January to not be susceptible to that interpretation of the law. So if you're interested, you should do a little bit background research there, and just so that you know if people are asking you questions. I know you get a lot of questions from your friends and neighbors since you're on ASCC. So associated with the housing element are also zoning code amendments, and we're working on drafting those right now. There's been 2 study sessions so far of the Planning Commission, and based on their feedback, we're really narrowing down the scope of the zoning code amendments to assist with kind of just the volume of work that has to happen by the end of the year. I'm sorry, yeah, by the Planning Commission by the end of the year, but by council and the whole town by the end of January. And then the other thing that people should be aware of is that there are very minor changes to other elements of the general plan for consistency. So the housing element is a part of the general plan. So we're already amending the general plan. And then we have to make small changes in other parts of the general plan for consistency. And those are going to be coming out pretty shortly. And those will be discussed by the Planning Commission starting on November 30th and at the 3 meetings after that. So a lot is happening and a lot is going to be happening on the housing element front through till the end of January. So there's a lot of resources on the website for those people who want to really engage with that material. It is a lot to kind of comprehend and understand. A lot is happening with that. And so we hope that those materials on the website are helpful. So that's a summary of what's happening with the housing element. I didn't want to get into too much detail, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about that process.
Thank you, Laura. I'll start out by assuming that Al doesn't have any questions.
I don't have any questions.
No questions from Al. And I'll also note, it appears that Megan has lost the connection. I don't see her on the list here, so I think she might be having internet problems.
Yeah, she's dropped off, but we still have a quorum for the record, if anyone.
Yeah, okay, good. So Kenny and Jane, do you have any questions about the housing element process that Laura just described?
I did have a hypothetical question because I was watching the Planning Commission meeting last week, and they were talking about a piece of land next to Roberts, and there was like a provisional plan for 9 units and then 2 ADUs. And I was just wondering, if we went into builder's remedy, would that mean that those plans on that piece of land could be changed and increased to whatever the builder or the owner decided, if we were left basically, I suppose, open to builder's remedy by not having our HCD in compliance?
That is a theoretical possibility.
Okay.
So any property, it is possible for someone to put in an application if we were not in compliance with housing element law starting on February 1st. So the legal threshold is substantial compliance with the law. That's our interpretation, not that we have to be certified by HCD, but that we have to be in substantial compliance. So we are working on our housing element to bring it to the point of being in substantial compliance by the end of January and adopting it as such. to protect the town from the builder's remedy.
Right, so it's really important that we get this done by the 31st of January, because otherwise anything could happen, really.
We town staff think it's very important
Yeah.
to finish it by January, and that has been the direction of council for a long time.
Yeah.
But we believe it's even more important now, given the discussion about builder's remedy. Now, there's a lot of legal questions that are unclear about builder's remedy, but we would not want to be even in the position of having such an application that we would have to potentially go to court over.
Right.
Or deal with some other kind of challenge or legal interpretation or the consequences of having to process such an application.
All right, thank you. They're very long meetings, I do have to say, Laura, when I'm watching them. So it's a lot of work that you're putting in.
It's a heroic effort from everybody involved. Kenny, do you have any questions about the housing element update?
Just one following on that discussion. Are we to understand that substantial compliance is a determination, a subjective determination made by HCD?
In this context, we believe substantial compliance could be made by the court, or once HCD certifies our housing element, the assumption is that you were in substantial compliance.
Right. So to follow that up, my understanding is that it's a bit of a gray area because it really hasn't been tested much in court. But HCD, I don't believe, issues any letter that says, yeah, you're basically there, but not all the way. You're in substantial compliance. I think that would be the town's position. And if there was a builder's remedy application, the town might contest that and it might end up in a lawsuit and a court would decide whether we were in substantial compliance or not. And that's my sense of really the only way to answer that question definitively is to have a court rule on it.
I think that's exactly it. And our plan right now, our best legal interpretation is that when we adopt the housing element, we'll adopt basically findings explaining why we think our housing element is in substantial compliance. And then we would hope that that would tie us over until it is certified. And then in a worst case scenario, a court would decide whether it's in substantial compliance.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question, Laura, and that is ADUs are a huge component of apparently every jurisdiction's solution for affordable housing in particular. I read the HCD letter and I got the impression from that letter and also letters that other jurisdictions have received that they're looking very, very closely at this ADU promise and they're rather skeptical about it and may want to require some kind of data gathering, monitoring, assurances that if a particular unit is designated by the town as having met the requirement, is an ADU, it's going to rent for less than $2,000 a month and therefore be affordable, that, you know, that rent doesn't increase the next year. The HCD is actually going to look to local jurisdictions to put in place monitoring and regulatory requirements on people who are building ADUs that the town wants to call a contribution towards the requirement for affordable housing. Is that planning staff sense also that there will have to be that sort of regulating component to ADU approvals?
Yes, that is our sense. Exactly how far we're going to have to go with that and other communities are going to have to go with that is not known. That's a gray area. So our existing housing element does have a program in it. Our draft housing element has a program that says that we would survey ADU owners and keep track of how ADUs are being used and if they're being rented and if they're being rented to lower income people. If it turns out that those ADUs are not being rented or not rented to lower income people, the state could come back and say that we need to change the way that we are counting ADUs in our annual reports that we turn into the state. So this is, the way they're talking about housing elements is different than in past cycles. They're talking about it like a contract between the jurisdiction and the state to provide a certain number of housing units. So we could see legislation change in the middle of the 8-year cycle. We could see HCD interpretations change, and we could see the town being forced to make adjustments if the projections don't turn out to be accurate for ADUs. So that's one of the things that we're going to follow up with the HCD reviewer to try to get some additional information so that we understand better those expectations.
I can imagine some pushback from residents to become a part of a monitored program,
Yes.
or to suffer, say, deed restrictions in order to get approval for their ADU.
Yes,
So
I think that's a big concern for ADU programs going forward.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering if, in a sense, the state isn't creating additional hurdles to people's desire to even apply for an ADU if they think that they're going to be part of a monitored program where their income from that ADU or their use of the ADU might be legislated.
I think it's a really interesting point. I think one of the themes that's come across in all of our, work with the countywide collaborative and the feedback that we've gotten from HCD is that there is a lot of hesitation around affluent communities using ADUs to say they've meet their lower income housing requirements when there's no, there's not enough data to support that that's how those units actually get used. And there's basically no data in any specific jurisdiction. There's only broad regional data. And HCD is very aware of some of the incentive programs that some affluent communities use where people just use that space as extra living space.
Right.
And it's not rented as an ADU at any time. Part of the ADU theory is that at least the unit is there and it could be rented in the future. But there's a much more skepticism around that philosophy than there has been in past years.
Yeah.
It's-
Okay,
it's-
well, I wanted to ask a question. I'm not imagining that we're going to have any answers anytime soon, but it's a conundrum.
It's quite a turnaround as well, really, because landlords normally just want to know that people can afford the rent, not how much they earn. And I mean, I think some tenants might regard that check as an invasion of privacy too, because it's very personal information they're going to be looking for. And how are you and how are you going to guarantee that they're giving the correct information? I don't know quite how they're going to work that one out, but
That's a good point.
as Dave said, it's a conundrum.
Yeah, it is a conundrum. As a renter, and I always will be, as long as I live in the Bay Area, I have given my income on every rental application that I've ever made. But you start to cross over a line about your household composition, the number of people that live there, fair housing rules, privacy expectations. There's a lot that comes into play. There's a lot of complexity here that people are not really thinking ahead and realizing how difficult it's going to be. And to the chair's point, creating potential deterrence for people who would want to just rent the unit to a teacher or someone else that works locally, but doesn't want to deal with all this hassle.
Yeah. And of course, one way to collect that information is to go sort of in the Title 8 direction, which is, you applicant can qualify for a $200 a month subsidy of your rent if you provide all this information. And so, but those kinds of programs and policies are not quick to figure out or put in place. So anyway.
Yeah, and some of this, just to add on a little bit, I'm sorry, might be done through nonprofits as the need
Yeah.
arises. So there might be nonprofits that will do these kinds of income verifications that can protect people's privacy more and differently.
Mhm.
And then just let people know, oh, this household is income qualified without knowing what that information is.
Uh-huh.
And so there's some tools that are part of the affordable housing practice, but they're going to have to be applied in new and different and creative ways, I think, in the next 8 years.
Yep. Okay, well, that exhausts my questions for the moment, or at least exhausts something. My energy level. Anybody else have questions for Laura on this subject?
No, thank you.
Great. I'll
We
open-
still have Dave Cardinal's hand up, so I was just going to try.
Yes, I was going to just open public comments and invite anybody to speak. And Dave, it sounds like you're first on the list.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, hear you just fine.
Oh, good, much better. So on the last topic, I apologize. The trailer is really the least of our worries. I think the thing is, it's there to keep a bunch of 50-year-old copper pairs out of the mud from a tunnel that keeps flooding more and more. And those are landlines that AT&T doesn't sell. They don't want to service. They could care less if they all disappeared. And that's just the deal, like it or not. So we can throw some camo over the trailer if we want, or we could tell them to take it away if we want and let the cables drop on the mud. But I don't think heaven or earth is going to convince them to invest more money in a very expensive copper landline structure. Everything's going into fiber. That whole thing is replaced by one fiber cable going up the road. And that's where all the money's going to go. So as a town, I think we need to own up to the fact that copper landlines aren't what we grew up with, and they never will be. They'll all be gone in 5 years or 3 years, and deal with it. And supposed to, there's nothing we could do to make AT&T change their mind. I mean, it's just too much money. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Are there any other commenters on the housing element item?
Rita has her hand up.
Rita, go ahead.
Thank you. One of the things that I didn't see much of in the housing element is about infrastructure. And I hope that the comments that you take about the infrastructure in our town, including that trailer, come from the utility companies that actually have the information and not just prospective ideas of other people that actually don't work for those companies. As a resident, I request that we look into the infrastructure as it pertains to the housing element so that we can welcome the new people into town and actually have phones and working electricity and all of those other items, and we figure out a way to pay for it forward.
Maybe even sewers.
Oh, yes, sewers. But some people like they like the fields and on their property, and so we also have to somehow respect that. And they've invested a lot of money into that, but we have to find a way to pay for all this, and that's a whole nother story. But thank you.
Right. Thank you for your comment, Rita. Anyone else would like to speak?
There are no other hands up.
Great. In that case, I'll close public comments on the housing element update and close item 3 altogether and move on to the approval of the minutes of the meeting of October 10th. Does anyone have any comments to make?
I have to
Corrections.
recuse myself. I can't vote on it because I wasn't there.
I think you're allowed to vote on it anyway.
Not
Oh.
there.
Let me check that with Laura. Is that the case, Laura, that
Typically, you are allowed to vote on the minutes even if you were not present. A common practice is for people to recuse themselves, but you are not required to. So it is up to
Okay.
you whether you wish to vote or not.
well, I think we have a quorum, even if Jane recuses and Megan is absent.
Well, Kenny has dropped off too now.
Kenny just has his camera off.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
in the-
I'm still here.
so, yeah, if in the schoolhouse, we can't see you if you have your camera off.
I got it. Okay, sorry.
Right.
All
All
right,
right.
I reviewed the minutes and they look fine to me.
All right. Let's see. Jane, you weren't present at that meeting, but let me just check and see. I seem to remember thinking that, no, the minutes show that you were absent. Okay, I think we're good on that. Is there a motion to approve these?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kenny. A motion and a second. Laura, would you do a roll call vote, please?
We should ask for any public comment before we.
Oh,
take-
good point. Are there any public comments about the minutes?
And there are no hands up.
All right, thanks for the reminder. Oh, close public comments, and now we'll go to a vote. We have a motion, a second to approve. All in favor? Oh, actually, Laura, sorry, you need to call the roll.
Yes, please. Commissioner Sill,
Aye.
Commissioner Chung,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
I think I should recuse myself as I wasn't there.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson abstains, and Chair Ross.
Aye,
Great, so the motion passes.
thank you. All right, that concludes our business for this evening. And thank you to everybody who came tonight, especially members of the public, to participate in our process. We'll end it there and look forward to the next meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
We're
everyone.
adjourned.
Have a good night.
Right.
Good night.